Welcome to part 4 of the series on chaos destruction. In this video, we'll be covering the geometry cache. Essentially what this does is record the transforms, so location, rotation, and scale, of each bone in your geometry collection during the simulation. This makes for a very efficient playback in-game without the resource drain of running an actual simulation and dragging down your FPS. It's also a useful development tool that allows you to manually scrub through your simulation, which can be very handy when you're trying to tweak your fractures or identify smaller fragments to help optimize your simulation. Links to the Epic documentation and project files will be in the description below. So let's get started. Here I have a stone arch that's available for free on Fab, which I already converted to a geometry collection and fractured it. I also added a master field with internal strain. Let's run the simulation to see how it looks. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now let's create a geometry cache for it. Select the Arch Geometry Collection in your outliner. Then, in the menu bar, select Actor. At the bottom, select Chaos, then Create Cache Manager. The transforms from the simulation will be stored in a Chaos Cache Collection asset, so we'll just name this CCC_Stone Arch. If you look in your outliner, you should see a Chaos Cache Manager Actor. This component is what does the actual recording of your simulation. By default, it places a dragon's head icon at the center of your world, location coordinates 0, 0, 0. The cache records the transform information of your geometry collection during the simulation, relative to where your cache manager icon is placed in your scene. Keeping it at this location will make things a lot easier, as you'll see later in this tutorial. Click on your cache manager in your outliner to select it. Let's check out some of the settings in the details panel. The cache collection is pointing to the file we specified to store the transform information during the simulation. Create new cache collection asset on record. By default, each time you record your simulation, it will overwrite the current cache collection asset. If you prefer to have a new one created each time, then enable this setting. Cache mode defaults to record, which means it's ready to record your simulation. Other options are static pose and play. Set this to play when you want to play back or scrub through your recorded simulation. Static pose is basically a term that means the playback is being controlled by a level sequence. Start mode is how will the recording be initiated. It defaults to timed, which means it will start recording as soon as you play the game or start the simulation. Triggered means it will start when triggered by a blueprint or level sequence. Start time. This is your slider control that lets you scrub through your cached simulation. Let's record our simulation to try that out. Verify that cache mode is set to record and start mode is set to timed. Then run your simulation. Stop the simulation when it's done. Now, change the cache mode to play and drag your start time slider to scrub through your cached simulation. If you find it's not working or the simulation isn't playing back correctly, this is a known bug which was supposed to be fixed in 5.7, but it still doesn't work 100% of the time. Here's how to fix it. Go to your content drawer and open up your geometry collection by double-clicking on it. Click on Continue Without Data Flow. In the search bar, type Renderer. Change the custom renderer type to None, then click Save and close this window. Try scrubbing through your cache again. If it's still not working, save your project and exit Unreal, then restart it again. That should fix it. Chaos Cache is still experimental, so expect issues. Before we move on to the next chapter, I just want to briefly talk about workflow. Now, ideally, when you're recording your simulation, you typically don't want to do this in your full working level, especially if you have other things going on like Niagara effects or animations, because these can have a negative impact on the performance of the simulation. When possible, create a new development level with only those scene elements needed for your simulation to interact with, and do all of your simulation tweaking there. You can then bring in the Chaos Cache collection assets back into your full working level to do the final testing. Now that we have our simulation cached, let's look at how we can add it to a level sequence. There are several ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the method that Epic recommends. Here we are in a clean level. Let's start by creating our level sequence. Click on this clapperboard dropdown and select Add Level Sequence. I already created a folder for it, so I'll just open that up and save it there. Let's name this ls_chaos cache. Now look for the Chaos Cache collection asset we created and drag it anywhere into your scene. Remember earlier in the video I mentioned about not moving the dragon icon for the cache manager and keeping it at the default location of 000 before we recorded the simulation? Now you'll see why. Reset the location on your Chaos Cache collection to 000, and you'll see it places it exactly in the scene where we had it before. In our outliner, notice that it now references our Chaos Cache collection as a Chaos Cache player. In the Details panel, you'll see the same controls that we had for our cache manager. The only difference being that the cache mode dropdown doesn't have a record option. Dragging your start time slider should allow you to scrub through your simulation. From your outliner, drag the Chaos Cache collection/player into your level sequence. In your sequencer, click the plus button next to your cache collection and select Start Time. Using this track, we can set up keyframes to tell the sequencer when to start playing our cache and when to stop. We can also tell it where in the cache to start playing from, if, for example, your cache recorded a delayed start to the actual destruction, but you want the sequencer to start playing the destruction immediately. For now, let's just play the entire cache as it was recorded. With your playhead at the starting position and the start time set to 0, let's add our starting keyframe by clicking on the Add a New Key icon on the start time track. If we were to play this now, it would only play the very first frame of our cache. What we need to do is create another keyframe far enough out on our timeline to run the full duration of our recorded cache. But how do we know the duration of our cache? In your content browser, find your Chaos Cache collection asset and double-click it to open it up. Look for Recorded Duration. This is how long our cache recorded the simulation. Make a note of that. We only need one place after the decimal. Close this window. Back in the sequencer, click on the FPS dropdown and select Show Time As, and make sure Seconds is selected. In the Controls bar section of the sequencer, enter our duration value and press Enter. This will move the playhead to that point on the timeline. Click on the red bar icon to specify the end of our playback range, which will represent the full duration of our cache file. On the start time track, change the value to be our duration value and press Enter. This will add another keyframe at the end of our timeline, essentially telling the sequencer to play the full duration time of our cache. Return your playhead to the front of the timeline and click the play arrow on the control bar to play the simulation through the sequencer. If you want for an added cinematic effect, you can add a time dilation track to your sequencer, just like we covered in the bonus tip chapter of part 3 in this series. You can also keyframe that track to speed up or slow down sections of your cache as you see fit. Before we end this video, I'd like to take what we've learned so far in this series and apply it to an actual environment. This won't be a professional grade effect, but it will give you an idea of how to get started and what to expect along the way. Okay guys, here we are in the Automotive Winter Scene by Epic. And what I'd like to do in this is I want to create a simulation of a rock fall about where this ice cliff is and spilling out onto the road. So this should cover everything we've learned in this series so far. Certainly something you guys can do yourself too. I'm not going to go through every single step here. Things like, creating the geometry collection and stuff like that. You guys already know. So I'm going to just kind of speed up through those sections. And I'll just jump in on those parts where I need to point something out to you. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to search for some boulders first. I want to put them in place, get the simulation going for those, and then we'll go from there. All right? Okay, I'm just not too happy with the fracture on this one. There's some bigger chunks I want to just fracture down a little more, so I'm just kind of looking at them, hunting them down, and then fracturing them. Okay, I can see that some of these fractures are falling through our road here, so I'm gonna check the meshes to make sure they have collision set up on them. I think this top one here there's a mesh on top here that does the wind effect. There's no collision on that, and I'm gonna take a closer look at that and add a collision to it just so I can keep these boulders on the road surface a little better. But otherwise, I like the fracture. It's not perfect, but I like the quantity of large chunks coming down and some smaller ones too. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, let me check out this collision stuff. So I added the collision to the mesh that does the wind effect. The one below it is the actual landscape itself, and I don't want to apply an entire collision on that. That's just going to be too heavy. But from a distance, it looks good. It looks like it's landing on the road. So we'll just go with that for now. What I would like to do next is add some more elements to this rock fall. I want to add some ice chunks, and I want to take some of these dead bushes, these pieces here, fragment some of those and have some of those coming out. I'd like to have like the ice and these bushes actually being forcefully thrown off the cliff. I want to really show the power of these rocks falling. So let me hunt down some of these bushes and work on that those ice chunks next. Okay, so they have 3 static mesh bushes. I like this one because it's got a lot of branches, so it'll give me a lot of fractured pieces. Problem is that um, I need 2 of them, And if I'm going to fracture them together, they can't overlap. And there's a lot of branches here, and it's going to be hard to find any overlaps with them. So I'm going to go back. There's the first one that's a simple bush, just a couple branches, and I'll duplicate that a few times. And that'll be a little bit easier for me to arrange them together so that they're not overlapping, and then I can just group them all together in a single geometry collection and fracture them all at once. So my force field doesn't seem to be working as well as I'd hoped. I'm going to bring everything down to ground level and play with it down there. Okay, my field system, the blueprint was set to tick on every second. Um, I was playing with it earlier and I forgot to reset it. So I reset it back uh, for to do on tick instead of every second, and that looks much better. Okay, I'm happy with the way the bushes are fracturing and breaking up, and I like the way they're being pushed way out to show the real force of these rocks falling. I want to do something very similar, but with chunks of ice this time. I don't think there's going to be any solid meshes. It looks like they're all cliff meshes, which are going to be one-sided, which won't work. They're open-ended meshes, so they won't work for fracturing. I'm just going to check a few, but so I think what I'm going to do is just create a simple cylinder. It'll have some of the roundness there that you'll see, like of ice when ice is over hanging over a rock. I don't want to use like a cube because there's the pointy edges. That's not going to look that great. So I'll create a cylinder. There's a nice ice material out there that's all ice, doesn't have any rock embedded in it. And we'll set that up. I'll put it in place, fracture it, and we'll test it out. Okay, having a little issue with the force field on the ice chunk. I'm going to come back to this a little later. What I want to do is I want to record the cache for the boulders and the bushes, and then I can remove them out of the way. I think it's getting a little cluttered here. I'll move them out of the way, then I'll focus on the fragments for the ice chunks. Okay, I'm happy with that cache sim, and so I'm going to get the boulders out of the way and do the same for the bushes next. Okay, overall I'm happy with that. Just on the ice chunks, there's some that are just a little too big, too many big ones. I want to get some more smaller ones in there. So I'm looking for some big pieces to fracture down. Okay, yeah, I really like that one. So, all right, we'll generate a cache for this one. Okay, we've got all the caches. Just pulled them into the scene, set them to location 0 so they're back at their normal positions. And I'm going to play them out and see how it looks. Okay, not too bad. I'm just going to tweak some of the positions a little bit. Let's see if I can get some more of the bushes fragments to come a little bit closer to the camera. All right, I think we'll go with that. And so now I'm just going to add those caches to the level sequence. Okay, so these weren't playing through the sequencer because cache mode needs to be set to static pose, which means that the sequencer is in charge. Okay, I'm just going back to these geometry collections. That custom renderer type I thought was the issue. It doesn't appear to be an issue, so I'm setting them back to their original values, that's all. And just retesting it to make sure they're working fine. Okay, there we go. Not too bad, not perfect, but you get the idea. Again, everything we've learned, you can do this too yourself. I'm just going to go and play around. I'm going to add a time dilation track. I think we're just going to slow everything down a little bit to give it a little bit more drama. Okay, I have it slowing down a little bit, just as these boulders, everybody reaches the bottom. Slows it down a bit. Not really liking it too much, to tell you the truth. Let me try, I think I'm just going to slow down the whole thing. Maybe right about here or something. And see how that looks. Finally got it. Figuring out. Putting values in the wrong spots, but that's all part of it, right? So I think we have it pretty good right now. I'm liking it. Slowing down just as everything starts hitting the road. Slows it down a little bit. Still got some collision issues. Stuff floating above, but that's all tweaking with your meshes and everything. This isn't the best scene for that, especially when you've got this wind material on top that isn't really at ground level, so that throws things off. So, but other than that, I think overall it looks pretty good. So guys, definitely download this scene from Fab. It's free. I'm not gonna include the scene itself in the project files because it's like 5 gig or something like that. It's a little too big for a download. But I will keep the geometry collection elements in there, the and the chaos cache elements in there. So you can just drag them into your scene. They should go right to where I had them, and you can tweak them from there. All right, guys? Well, thanks for watching, and I'm thinking about doing a part 5. I have some ideas for making how to actually do better fractures to make them look more realistic. So I just have more research to do on that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.